And we are live.
The Fantasmagorium is proud to present Faster and More Intense, a retrospective and review of the directorial works of George Lucas. Darth Vader! After a promising and diverse early career, George Lucas was primarily defined as a writer-director, a world builder, some may say a visionary, in an era when that word wasn't thrown around willy-nilly. By 2005, he was Star Wars. He was known for Indiana Jones and Willow, Howard the Duck, but he was Star Wars. Revenge of the Sith brought the prequel trilogy to a close, and apparently Star Wars as a whole. As of the recording of this video, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, is the last credited feature directorial endeavor from a man who literally changed cinema. Kat is here. I am Scotty R37. Thankfully, Ernesto joins us this evening from Coruscant, and Steve is a bold one. How are you guys doing?
Good.
I am flabbergasted. I am flabbergasted by this film. Flabbergasted. And as I would like to continue with it, Ernesto, how did you see Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith for the first time?
Well, I was still living in Puerto Rico at the time, and my mother took me to the midnight premiere back when you could still do midnight premieres. We went to the theater, which was a shorter distance than the main mall we would always go to because they had an earlier showtime. If you can believe it, even after midnight, there's still like an earlier showtime in Puerto Rico. And there was a line. I could say about half of the line was dressed up for it. The other half was just wearing Star Wars shirts, holding Walmart and Kmart, back when Kmart was still around, lightsabers and everything. And I remember the usher and the manager at the cinema came out and said, "So some of the reels aren't here yet. So for those show times, they're going to be a bit delayed. If you are okay waiting, we can give you some vouchers while you wait, and then we can start. Otherwise, there's another theater about 10 minutes from here, and you can go watch it. It's going to be starting about 20 minutes. About half of those people took off. They didn't want to wait any longer. So I stayed there, and then we promptly went in. I think by that point, it was already 1 o'clock in the morning, so an hour delay. But the popcorn was free. The soda was free, and the rest was history. I remember that weekend I saw it 3 times. Midnight with my mom, the afternoon after school with my friends, and Sunday with my dad. It was a great time. All things considered, without even discussing the faults of it, it was a great time, and you can feel it. Yeah. You can feel the energy, regardless of what came before, regardless of what would come later. It's been a while since I've recall ever being in that kind of setting. The last time was when Avengers Endgame came out.
Yeah, good. Yeah. And it is and there is going to be some shade thrown this evening, but I certainly do appreciate that. Yeah, no, this was when Star Wars was still a phenomenon. And when you got new Star Wars, it blew your hair back. Steve, what was the first time for you?
I saw it opening weekend 3 times, like Ernesto. I took my girlfriend before my mom this time. Same girlfriend from the previous movie. Thank God. But yeah, so she loved Yoda so much in the first one. She wanted to go opening night to this one, or the second one, I mean. So we did that, and then I took my mom the following day, and then I went with buddies on the Sunday, I think it was. Yeah, I remember really liking this film. But out of all 3, it was obviously my favorite one. And I think I saw it before it went out of the theater a couple more times. I think 5 times before it went away.
And like I didn't see, and I'm curious to find out what exact. Sorry about the stutter, but I'm curious. I'm the Droid Federation. Anyway, and I only saw this one, I think, in theaters once.
Really?
Yeah. Cat.
Were people
how was
dressed up?
your-
I remember clearly for all three of these at this trilogy, people dressed up in the theater. Were people dressed up in your theater? Yeah. That's awesome.
For Phantom Menace, yes, but by the time I got to Attack of the Clones and
No.
Revenge of the Sith, no.
Okay.
Kat, what was your first experience?
Opening day in the afternoon. Very long day waiting to go to see that movie. It didn't have a huge line, which was surprising because we ended up getting good seats even though it was a packed house. I had a blast. It was fun. I remember a few weeks later, I skipped my sister's high school graduation to walk to the theater to watch it again. And then I remember seeing my parents sometime. Yeah, sometime after that. So I did see it 3 times. I don't remember. I don't think anybody dressed up at these screenings, but you could definitely see the growth in terms of the effects and ILM. Some of that stuff just looked amazing, like jaw-dropping. And it was easy to get because you're finally seeing the culmination of everything that Star Wars fans kind of knew was going to happen even before there was anything official ever written about it. Like going back for years, the Lava Planet has always been like you knew this stuff was coming, and to finally see it, I mean, yeah, the poor effects of it aside, of at least of that portion of it, it still was amazing to kind of see that.
Yeah, in that treatment that I showed a couple weeks back, Revenge of the Jedi, the opening scene is Lava Planet. So it's far back because that was 1983 or something, like, you know what I mean. So it's always been part of the lore.
It's been something, well, and that's one of the joys of a George Lucas script is that the lore or the attested to truth of his writing process is that he has multiple ideas and he pockets them and he waits to use them again. And that's the birth of the trilogy, as opposed to just trying to make a single movie that would have been the Star Wars trilogy. And I'm sure with this one, it's funny how you can make a Star Wars trilogy when you have a plan, but
yeah, right.
Hello. I think younger me would be a bit disappointed in older me because younger me didn't really, even to this point, I could consider myself a casual when it comes to Star Wars, even though I could quote any portion that I want or do my best Darth Sidious if I want, but I'm not like you're not gonna be able to catch me winning a trivia game about what ship was used in this scene or what was the model of blah. You're never gonna see me that, nor will I be able to talk about, well, in this book, in this chapter, that's not me. But younger me never cared about the fact that it was the prequels. The younger me never cared about whether midichlorians ruined the lore or anything. The younger me just wanted to watch Star Wars.
Yep, me too.
Well, and that was my first experience with Revenge of the Sith. Is I woke up in the morning, I made coffee, and then I watched episode 1. And then I went to the theater and I bought tickets for episode 3. I came back and I bought like for 5 people. And I came back. I watched episode 2 and people started to trickle in and hang out with me watching episode 2. And then we went to go see episode 3. And then we came back to my apartment and we watched episode 4. And we started Empire Strikes Back and people started to leave. And I fell asleep and I woke up when Ewoks were really starting to win in Return of the Jedi. And I watched the end of it. And that was my first day watching Revenge of the Sith, is that I wanted to be like, finally, the missing puzzle piece is here. I want to watch it all in order. It was the first time that I got to do that with the first 6 episodes. I've never done it with all 9, nor do I intend to. But that was my first time, and understandably, I hope I can throw myself on the mercy of the panel and say, after I did that, I was done with Star Wars for about 6 months.
get you. That's fair.
But
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved it. I went there with a very enthusiastic crowd again on opening night. And whenever things looked like it was going to get dramatic, I was there with a lady friend who said, "Cut his arm off." And they did. And it was great. And I was like, "Why do you keep yelling that?" And it's like, it's the only move that they have in Star Wars movies. They cut off people's arms. And it's
Everybody
like,
loses an arm.
So I had a blast, both in experience in theater, digital presentation again was gorgeous. And I did it as an earnest Star Wars fan. I wanted it all to fit. Like you said, Ernesto, I didn't care it was a prequel. I knew this is when we were finally going to see Darth Vader. And I knew that the two previous movies had been building to this moment. And I wanted to see how well it would fit into A New Hope. And I'll remind the children in the audience, by the way, this isn't for children. This is before Rogue One.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to see all 6 episodes. I wanted to see it all just go into, and is it one story? And there are times when we were like sitting there watching A New Hope and being like, no. When we see C-3PO and then Darth Vader shows up right after, and it's like, hey, he built him.
Yeah, when I was younger, and sometimes even to today, I turn off the critic, and I turned off the critic way back then with movies I really love. Star Wars being that, you know what I mean? You just kind of turn off your critical eye and just enjoy it for what it is. I seem to be able to do that a lot easier back then than I do now.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's a sign of the times, I'm just an old man or what it is, but I agree, Ernesto. Back then I didn't care. I didn't care about midichlorians. I didn't care about any of that shit. I liked watching pod races. I liked watching, lightsaber duels, and it was badass.
Yeah. And I brought this up when you guys were on episode 1 in the chat, that the Lego Star Wars game for the Game Boy Advance had come out in the lead up to Revenge of the Sith. And I remember I'm playing that game and I'm just like, I feel like I just watched all the major story beats of this movie before it came out. And then I'm in line watching it with my friends, and my friends were kind of getting annoyed with me because they thought I was making shit up as I go. I'm just like, yeah, and then Anakin fights Count Dooku, and then he slices his head off, and then at one point Padme gets choked by Anakin. It's great. And they're just like, what are you talking about? Stop it. I don't know what's wrong with you. And then here comes the movie, and then the moment we get to Mustafar, I told my friend, I told you. And he told me, shh. Yeah, it was great.
Don't spoil
I do want to thank Eugene Bird in the chat. Eugene Bird with the super sticker. And it says rage quit.
Rage quit.
Well, I appreciate, any support to the channel. I hope that this isn't your parting rage quit. I hope.
Yeah, thanks for supporting the channel like you always do. It's amazing.
Yeah.
On that level, it's great. Thank you.
And thank you so much to the Phantom Organist for being here.
Good evening.
Evening.
So happy to see that you live. And Herc130. Hello, panel and chat. Hello, Herc130. It's good to see you, Flyboy. Get a little airplane going from Eugene. Daniel's Hot Topics says, where was Ahsoka in episode 3? I always wondered.
Didn't exist yet as a character.
But that's true. But also, it depends on how you feel about retcons and whatnot. But there was a decent sort of edit that was done during the pandemic that sort of puts together all of the Clone Wars and Order 66. They did do something to try and weave it together.
She was on Mandalore.
What? Yes.
She was on Mandalore. There wasn't an edit. It was the whole. There was a whole series of episodes.
Yeah.
About that in season 7 of Clone Wars.
The only thing that doesn't make it work is that even if she isn't there or didn't exist, I can't imagine we just went through a whole 2-hour plus movie and not a single mention of that character was made. I mean, you would realistically, her name would be peppered in. So when we were getting into that point with the Clone Wars, I'm just like, how is she still alive? Shouldn't she be dead? She's not even in Revenge of the Sith.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because that's what George Lucas wanted. He wanted to kill her off at the end of Clone Wars, and Filoni who's obsessed with the character, decided to stop that once Lucas left the company.
Yeah.
And that's to its detriment because it really doesn't work that she's still alive in 3. Like, it's to your precise point, it doesn't work.
Well, and into Revenge of the Sith, wasn't Shaq T essentially
Shock.
Ahsoka before?
Yeah. Well,
Well, that was a deleted scene.
yeah.
She has the most deleted scenes out of any Star Wars
She has
character
the
in the
most
history of Star
deleted
Wars.
scenes, but she has the best moment in the Genndy Tartakovsky series.
Okay.
If they would
I
have,
thought she died in episode 2 as well.
No.
no, I don't think.
I thought that was a deleted
I
scene.
don't
My
think she
mistake.
was
My
in the
mistake.
arena.
She dies twice in episode 3, depending on which, from the deleted scenes and the ones that stayed in the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
And because they deleted it, she does die in The Force Awakens, and not The Force Awakens, the Force Unleashed, when you have to fight against her on the planet where the Rancors come from.
Now, Steve,
Yes.
I do have to ask you a question. Throughout this review of George Lucas's directorial endeavor of Star Wars Revenge of the Sith,
Yes.
how much are we going to be talking about his legacy as a director or how well he directed the film, and how much of it are we going to be talking about Star Wars lore?
90-10. Star
Like
Wars lore.
90% Star Wars lore? I just wanted to know which kind of mindset to get into. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because I mean for all the reasons that are self-apparent.
Well, can I begin with 5% of how this movie looks, how it is produced, and how far we have come from THX 1138, abstract creativity, to American Graffiti, which is blatant nostalgia, Star Wars 1977, where it is adaptive nostalgia with a new twist and new technologies. And now we're at Revenge of the Sith with basically only Star Wars films under his belt as a director.
Yeah.
And I think that the framing looks gorgeous, and yet it is flat. It looks like a high priority cutscene from Wing Commander 3, the entire movie. I think that the performances do it some justice. I think Natalie Portman and Ewan McGregor are doing double time effort.
Agree.
And every one of the special effects artists is working overtime. I'm sure that it was storyboarded. I'm sure that it was written. But I find this, out of all of the films, I think that the direction and final story sort of go limp near the end. You do get a Lord of the Ring-itis with how many endings are we going to have in this film, and the first ending happens at an hour and 20 minutes in a 2-hour and 20-minute movie.
I don't know about that.
No, when the war ends, that's what we've been doing. It's called Star Wars. Let's end the Star War. And so I think I like this movie for the emotional satisfaction. And I brought up, before we went to air, I brought up Jangly Keys. This is very much existing in the Star Wars world. I wouldn't necessarily call it Jangly Keys. It does provide me with the closure to all of the anecdotes that I have willingly subjected myself to until this point. I smiled the entire time, but I would say that this movie is a technical marvel and a narrative flop.
Narratively, I think it works. The problem is this, there's the acting and execution, and
the execution. And I think the look of the film, I do like the look of the film, but I think what's his name? David Tattersall, the cinematographer. I think he gets the credit for that much more than George.
Which makes sense. Again, it's a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
And the amount of cross-cutting with key scenes of drama just doesn't work.
Who edited the movie? I can't remember who edited the movie.
I think Ben Burt, didn't he? He was a
Ben Burt, probably, and
I saw
Roger
Ben
Barton.
Burt a lot in the closing credits.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's.
Well, we can double check right now just to be sure before we throw anybody under the bus.
Not Ben.
I thought it was Roger Barton, but
Roger, it might be Roger Barton. It might be that.
It's been a long time, so since I even gave a damn about it, so I could be wrong. I most certainly am. Usually.
Ernesto, what are your impressions of the film?
Yeah, Roger Barton and Ben Burt.
Oh, they both edited the film.
You're on mute.
You're muted, sir.
Sorry, I was about to say the answer, but I'm gonna say, I don't know if this is controversial or not, but out of all three of them prior to well, you know what? Out of all 9 of them, without including Rogue One, this has the best opening of the franchise, with the drums of war, the Starfleet just over the, eclipsing the sun, and you see the 2 ships for Anakin and Obi-Wan just gliding in.
I do love the opening of this film.
And then you have John Williams' score just kick in, and then when it goes down and you see the Separatists versus the clone army, I'm just like, oh, we're in. We are so in.
Right, drops you right into it.
Like that, you just dove in there, and then when you get the bum, ba-ba-dum, bum, bum, and then it kind of slowly gets into R2-D2. This is why watching a movie with a Puerto Rican crowd is better than any other ethnic group out there, because the moment R2-D2 showed up, I think my ears just popped and started bleeding of how loud it got in there. And they would, like, you're talking about jangly keys. I think R2-D2 would turn his head and people are going, ah! That's how electrifying. All three nights I went to saw it, all 3 times people were just going crazy, and the whole thing was just, as an experience, great. But looking back on it and watching it by today's standards and everything, even though we did have a lot of fun, narratively, it gets you from point A to Z and everything. Half the time the acting is to the detriment, because let's face it, George Lucas is not good directing his actors, and sometimes the more seasonal actors have to come up, pull out of their ass to make the scene work and the dialogue work. But I gotta say, that one scene which still holds up, when Anakin and Padme are looking towards the horizon, and they're not in the same room, but they know something's about to happen, and he knows what he has to do, and she can feel it. She doesn't want to, but she knows they're like, without a single word of dialogue. That was it.
That was a beautiful scene.
That was excellent. Probably one of the best scenes in the movie in terms of just actual filmmaking as opposed to Star Wars-y scenes.
Yes.
Right.
And then,
you used to say, Steve?
Yeah, the last thing I was going to say is that, everything was just on full force. You see even by the time Order 66 was coming in, the makeup, the costume, the visual effects, everything just got a shot of steroids and adrenaline in that portion of the movie where we're all just, we know it's about to happen, we know it's coming, and we're just sitting there like, holy fucking shit.
Right.
You were about to say, Steve, because Kat has a thought.
Oh no, I lost that train of thought.
Oh,
they asked you to spy on me, didn't they?
That's great. Should I run through the plot real quick, or?
Sure.
All right. So this movie picks up 3 years after the last one. General Grievous, the new Separatist general, has kidnapped Palpatine from Coruscant with his badass fleet, with his badass starship Invisible Hand. Anakin and Obi-Wan, with the help of R2, infiltrate the ship. They go to rescue Palpatine. Anakin executes Dooku after disarming him, which was originally a great subplot from the book and the script that did not make its way into the movie, to the film's detriment. Anakin cracks a joke when Palpatine
what is the subplot that you're going to tease and dangle
I'll
in the world?
I'll get to that when we get there. But
all right.
Anakin cracks a good meta joke when Palpatine says we should just leave Obi-Wan. We'll never make it. He's like, well, his fate will be the same as ours. It's like, yeah, well, all 3 of you die in the Death Star, so I guess that tracks. They get captured by Grievous during the escape, And the CGI for that character was unbelievable. Still holds up today. Magnificent looking character. And he has a badass escape, like genuine big surprise of the movie for me when he just blows out the front windshield and takes off into the vacuum of space. I'm like, okay, that's really badass. The ship breaks in half, starts falling into the re-entry, and Anakin has to pilot it. They land the ship. The battle's over. He reunites happily with Padme, finds out that she's pregnant. He starts having nightmares that she's going to die. He tells her about it, and she tells him not to worry, and that she will say, oh, we should just leave all this behind and go back to Naboo. He's still stressed about it and asks Yoda for advice. He's like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, don't mourn people who die. Be happy for them joining the Force. So, that didn't really help. So then when they get an update that Grievous might be on Utapau, Anakin goes to tell Palpatine this, and Palpatine decides to try and seduce Anakin with the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, which we could read between the lines and realize that Palpatine is talking about how despite that his own master learned how to cheat death, he could not save himself when he was killed in his sleep. And Anakin's like, oh, is it possible to learn this power? Oh, not from a Jedi. Anakin, meanwhile, is asked to be put on the Jedi Council by Palpatine because he wants to spy on them. The Jedi decide to grant it because in turn they want Anakin to spy on him. Anakin's upset and throws kind of a bitch fit about it because they're not going to make him master, but he later apologizes to Obi-Wan, which kind of impresses him. Obi-Wan is sent to Utapau to find Grievous while Yoda goes to Kashyyyk, because what about the droid attack on the Wookiees? Which has become a great demon of itself, or something that's like, what the fuck? Obi-Wan goes to Utapau, where I thought it was kind of funny that the Powans, who are the super tall species, are upset because they're about to be enslaved by the Separatists, despite the fact that these Powans enslave the diminutive Utai who work for them. So I thought, okay, that's kind of funny. Obi-Wan finds Grievous. They have this really awesome...
None of that is conveyed in the movie.
But they have this really awesome fight. We see that Grievous likes to fashion himself as the Great White Hunter of the Jedi Knights, which he was in the Gennady Tarkovsky series. But here he's just kind of... People have joked that this movie is almost like Jedi propaganda and that you're seeing him more as a coward, because that's how the Jedi would see him. But is he really that way? They get in a badass mono-wheel chase, so Grievous takes off when Obi-Wan brings in the clone legions to attack the Separatists. And they have this awesome chase scene, partly directed by Spielberg, in fact. Ends with Obi-Wan having to kill Grievous by shooting him to death with a blaster. Meanwhile, Anakin goes to talk to Palpatine, and Palpatine decides this is the time to reveal that he is Darth Sidious, because he's already been wrapping Anakin around his finger by getting him to admit that the Jedi asked you to spy on me, that they don't trust you, and blah, blah, blah. And Anakin initially rejects Palpatine. He's like, no, I'm going to discover the truth of all this. You're done. And he's like, oh, sure, but, with me, you have the power to save your wife from certain death, and that's what really sets him off. So Anakin goes to tell the council, and Mace Windu's shocked and tells Anakin to stay put. Mace Windu takes off to deal with it. That's when you had that great cross scene between, the sunset with Padme contemplating and Anakin contemplating. Windu has this badass confrontation with Sidious where he's like, by order of the Galactic Senate of the Republic, you are under arrest, Chancellor. And it's like, well, actually, it wasn't ordered because he didn't tell anybody about it, but okay. Sidious then whips out this badass lightsaber, which I happen to have right here for our viewing pleasure. Darth Sidious's lightsaber. He quickly and effortlessly leaps across the desk after proudly declaring to Mace Windu that I am the Senate, and he kills.
And I like how it's like it's treason.
Yes, and so he very easily kills 3 Jedi. He fights Mace Windu reasonably well, but when he senses that Anakin's coming, Palpatine deliberately throws the fight, feigns being an old man and in pain. Oh, help me, blah blah blah, and Anakin insists that they should put him on trial, but Mace Windu's like, that's not going to work. He controls the Senate and the courts. So Anakin makes a choice when Palpatine shoots out the Sith lightning towards Mace Windu, who Palpatine allows Windu to deflect the lightning back on his face to further sell the idea that he's a helpless old man, prompting Anakin to literally disarm Mace Windu, at which point we get the iconic unlimited power line from Palpatine as he kills Mace Windu by electrifying him to death with Sith lightning and blasting him off the parapet. Anakin's shocked, immediately regrets his decision, but realizing there's nothing else he could do, he pledges himself to Darth Sidious right then and there. And he says, oh, you're fulfilling your destiny. He names him Darth Vader. And even though Anakin was just really feeling bad about this, he's like, what are we going to do about all the Jedi? How are we going to deal with all the Jedi across the galaxy? It's like, you realize you're the one who told them about this, right? But I guess he forgot. So Vader is tasked with leading the 501st Legion on the Jedi Temple in an awesome beginning of Order 66, where you have him slaughtering all the Jedi Masters. No, he did not spare anybody named Reva and killed everybody, because that's what Darth Vader does. He even killed the younglings. Padme is watching the fires burning from the temple and has a breakdown. 3PO tries to...
Wait, I didn't think that he spared Reva. I thought he stabbed her.
He did, but then when he found out afterwards that she lived, he decided to let her live. And so...
But remember, this is pre-Disney. When back when you got stabbed, you died.
Yeah.
Well, also, don't forget that this is pre A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. So there's been a lot of stuff that's been changed.
Yes. Palpatine, meanwhile, decides to execute Order 66, which is achieved by a secret order implanted in a microchip in the clones' brains, which is why they don't question it. And you have another sequence directed by Spielberg, which is the Order 66 montage, which is probably why it's one of the coolest things in the movie. You're seeing all the Jedi get slaughtered across the galaxy. Bail Organa, meanwhile, tries to save Jedi at the temple, but when the clones turn him away, he decides to... He's like, okay, that's good. But he takes off and decides to go rescue Obi-Wan, whom he picks up in General Grievous's ship, which Obi-Wan is forced to steal to escape Utapau. And Yoda, meanwhile, is escorted by Tarful and Chewbacca to an escape pod on Kashyyyk, where he takes off and gets also rescued by Bail Organa. They return to the Jedi Temple, where Obi-Wan and Yoda fight their way inside, re-scramble the emergency code to warn Jedi to stay away. They check surveillance footage, which they have from inside Palpatine's office. Now, I don't know why they have access to that, but they do. Which is ironic, because it's kind of proving Palpatine right when he says, see, they're spying on me, they're plotting against me. And they see that Anakin has pledged himself to Darth Vader, that Palpatine's a Sith Lord. They see Anakin killing younglings, and Obi-Wan's like, send me to kill the Emperor. Send me to kill Palpatine. I can't deal with this. And Yoda's like, no, you're not strong enough. You go deal with Anakin. And so, meanwhile, Palpatine decides to call an emergency session of Congress. He's like, I've been attacked. The Jedi are taking over, and we're going to reorganize everything into a galactic empire. And in the spirit of simplifying Star Wars politics for kids, everybody just blindly accepts this at the drop of a hat. And it's now an empire. And while this is going on, Vader is on Mustafar, where he has been sent to slaughter the Separatist Council. And again, Vader doesn't ask, why would you know where they are? He just goes with it, slaughters everybody there. Obi-Wan gets Padme to reveal where Anakin is by way of saying, look, I know Anakin's done these horrible things. I know you're pregnant. I know he's the father, which I thought was actually a pretty good scene when he says, Anakin is the father, isn't he? And he sneaks aboard her ship because he knows she's going to go find him, which she does. And that's where Vader immediately tries to kill her upon seeing Obi-Wan, because he falsely thinks she brought Obi-Wan there to kill him. Obi-Wan doesn't want to hear Vader's excuses. They get in an awesome duel where Obi-Wan cuts off Vader's left arm and legs in a parallel scene from Phantom Menace. Because everybody jokes about the high ground scene, but the thing is the reason Obi-Wan says don't try it. He's like, I know what you're doing. You're trying to do the same thing I did to Maul. It's like, it's not going to work. I know what move you're going to use. So Obi-Wan leaves Anakin there to die, burning alive, and he's justified in thinking he's going to die. Of course, being the chosen one, the Force keeps him alive because he needs to survive. Yoda, meanwhile, goes to confront Sidious, and there's a badass scene where he just flips his fingers up like this, causing the two royal guards to just die without batting an eyelash. And
I mean, they killed them.
Yeah,
he didn't kill them. He knocked them out.
Master Yoda, you survived. He's like, what? He's surprised. To which he's like, clearly surprised, and Palpatine tries to leave after electrifying him, and Yoda stops him. He's like, well, if you're so powerful, why leave? And Palpatine says something interesting. He's like, Darth Vader will become more powerful than either of us, which is surprising that he's kind of excited by that notion. Usually, Sith want to consolidate their power, but no, he's thrilled about it. So they get in an awesome lightsaber duel inside the Senate chambers, where he's literally ripping apart all the Senate pods and chucking them at it. And it sort of ends in a draw where they both disarm each other. Yoda's exhausted, injured, has to escape. Bail Organa rescues him. They go to this asteroid planet, Polis Mesa, out in the far reaches of the Outer Rim, where Padme is also there with Obi-Wan. She gives birth to twins, dies because of, I guess, sadness, or maybe the Force killed her because she needs to die at this point in the story. Vader, meanwhile, is rescued by Palpatine. He's put in the iconic suit. First thing he asks is, where's Padme? Is she safe? Is she all right? And Palpatine's like, seems in your anger you killed her, and he freaks out.
What does he say? What does he
Hmm?
say?
What does he say?
No, like Frankenstein. It's like, oh god,
Thank you.
we didn't need that moment. But
Wow.
Padme, meanwhile, has a somber funeral on Naboo where she is buried with the Japorcine pendant that Anakin carved for her 13 years earlier. That's also the only scene in the movie where you see Jar Jar Binks, who's there being very sad about it. Yoda then decides that the children have
And
to be
Boss
kept.
Nass. Boss Nass was there too.
Boss Nass.
Yes, Boss Nass. Yoda decides the children have to be kept secret and safe and separated. Bail Organa is like, we'll adopt Leia, so he goes back to Alderaan. The only time we get to see the surface of Alderaan, and it's a beautiful planet. Obi-Wan is then tasked with taking Luke to his uncle and aunt on Tatooine, where Obi-Wan pledges to watch over him. Vader and Palpatine, meanwhile, join Tarkin to oversee the construction of the Death Star. There's a deleted scene where Yoda gets dropped off on Dagobah, and then Obi-Wan hands over baby Luke to Owen and Beru, and Beru's super excited about it, whereas Owen is kind of looking out at the sunset because he knows what this means. He knows what Obi-Wan expects. So you expect me to raise this kid and so you can come back and take him. And it's kind of taking that in, looking at the sunset while Obi-Wan walks off into a life of exile. And it ends on the binary sunset on Tatooine, and that is the end of the Revenge of the Sith.
Well, you know, it rhymes.
It does. Yes, I like that he did invite Spielberg to direct certain scenes. I know there's an extended animatic of the monowheel chase, which originally went on for got 40 pages in the script. It was so awesome. And you can see some of these deleted animatics that Spielberg made, and they were awesome. The Order 66 scene, there's little touches that he adds that are like subtle. Like when Ayla Secura dies, she's on Felucia, and it's like that planet with all the giant neon flowers. And it's like when she gets shot, the flower petals kind of cover just the right moment. And he adds these little nuances what made it work. Whereas George was a little bit more, blatant with it. Like I mentioned, I really hated the cross-cutting between Obi-Wan confronting Grievous on Utapau and Anakin, speaking to Palpatine and him revealing he's a Sith Lord. I'm like, that does not work. You're having two major kind of confrontations here that just doesn't really fly.
You should have an undercard and then main event.
Yes. I didn't like, again, the dialogue and the acting and of all the romance stuff just really didn't work for me. It's just like cringy. I do like the funny story where George told John and Noel about Squid Lake. And he's like, we need to have the Squid Lake scene for Plagueis. And he thought he was kidding. And then months later, he's like, so where are we on Squid Lake? And he realized he was telling the truth because he didn't want yet another dialogue scene in Palpatine's office, which is true because they get kind of repetitive. And so Squid Lake was that was kind of a neat thing.
Well, I didn't bring up when my initial introduction and when I was talking about the acting, I very much enjoy Ian McDiarmid. He is doing he's doing a great job, and it is nuanced. I don't like that he got disfigured because I always thought that he was just old in Return of the Jedi. I didn't think he got all messed up by
that surprised
lasers.
Me too, actually, on the first viewing. I didn't think that was going to happen either.
But I thought that it would have been more sinister if he hadn't have been deformed. But I guess that he needed physical proof that he had been attacked by the Jedi instead of Darth Vader being like, I'm the only witness.
I got to say, though,
it turns into a courtroom drama for a bit.
When he first pulls that hood over his head after that scene, it's like, oh, we're back. It's like, we're back. And you see the fireball.
Still a frog face.
We're here as a Star Wars fan that's like, yes. And you get to finally see him. It's like, okay, this is, we're here for this.
No, but I wasn't there for that because we had seen him for 2 movies where he hadn't been all frog-faced and he looked like the Emperor, but younger, and he would grow into that evil and it would wear on him. And I thought that they did a good job of aging up Palpatine throughout the prequel trilogy. And when they got to the 3rd one, if they had just made him older and then, I don't know, the bags under his eyes or something, the yellow eyes, and everybody just thinks it's a disfigurement because they got whatever. I don't care. But I just thought that when they gave him Admiral Akbar's underwaddle, I was like, no, you fugly. The thing about the Emperor is that he was a decrepit old man who was still so powerful. It was the antithesis to Yoda, Yoda was a cute little fun guy, and then you find out that he's really wise and powerful. But when you meet the Emperor, he's a real decrepit old man,
Right, but he
with
is
no power whatsoever. He's not fugly because he's been disfigured.
Right, but he's not like all
I'm
wrinkled.
just finishing my point, if you wouldn't. Young Skywalker. And that's the thing, is that I didn't think that that was necessary, and I think that that was just a special effect thing. And again, I think this entire movie is just a special effect thing. I think it's all just to test out special effects, makeup effects. Like, I'm totally unconvinced by the CGI Emperor eyeballs that happen afterwards. There's no acting that happens from Ian McDiarmid once he is for all frog-faced. Because it's all just like he literally has yellow googly eyes. It looks ridiculous. There's no nuance to his performance. It's high beams. It looks silly.
It's the same eyes he had in Return of the Jedi.
No. Those were like either contact lenses, and there were some moments in Revenge of the Sith where that did happen. But in terms of the movie making, if you watch it, I don't know when the last time you did watch it. I watched it approximately 2 hours ago. And I was watching this thing and I was like, those eyes are fucking stupid. There's no eyelid. It doesn't look like, it looks like someone put eyes that you would put on a Cookie Monster cookie.
Google,
and they're just on his face. It looks stupid. Now, to me, as a person who is reviewing the directorial choices of George Lucas.
Well, he's not wrinkly at all when his face gets fucked up like it is in Return of the Jedi, so he does age and grow into it.
Yeah, but that's like, what, how many years later?
Let's see, 23 years
20?
later?
Yeah, and then there's compressed evil being in him.
Yeah,
so
but he's still.
That's how I would have explained it.
Doing it. Eugene Bird says, "Who needs acting when we have lightsabers?"
Whoosh.
Well, and it's interesting, and that's the reason why I bring it up, and that's why I made sort of the flippant question as to whether or not this was going to be a Star Wars lore situation or if it was going to be a directorial assessment of George Lucas. I love talking Star Wars lore, but I am going to bring up just like the things. Like, I don't know anything about the substance that was used to carve Padme's death pendant.
Did you pour snippet?
Well, I didn't even check out the Wikipedia for this page. I watched the movie, and so
one of the
I don't know. I like the lore just throws me a little bit, and it makes me wonder whether or not we are appreciating a movie because of its quality as a film,
right? But
we're looking at it because it's because it's a Star Wars.
We've already established that he rushed the filming schedules of all three of these movies because he was more interested in the pre-production and post-production phase. And that is plainly on display for all to see with the Anakin and Padme scenes in the beginning, which is like, oh, is it because love has blinded you? No, it's because I'm so in love with you. It's like, people always bag on about the sand comment in episode 2, but for me, that back and forth with Padme in 3 is so much worse.
Oh, it's bad. Yeah,
it's like, and this is very much the most plot-driven film and the most checklist-oriented movie of the 3.
Yeah.
Of the 6.
So one of my favorite designs for New Jedi was Kit Fisto, and Eugene Bird is right. Kit Fisto died like a bitch. I mean, Palpatine went through those 3 Jedi. I don't know all their names. I know Kit Fisto just because he's Kit Fisto.
Yeah, no, Kit Fisto's the guy.
Right? Yeah.
All 3 of their names.
Oh, Sassy 10, yeah. And like, what the? Maybe just walk. He just runs through those Jedi like they're not even there.
I was so upset when Plo Koon died.
Me too. Plo's one of my favorite characters.
I think that scene when they are going to arrest Palpatine would have been served better if they had kept the original choreograph where, Palpatine still ends up killing them all, but they put up more of a fight. And in the choreograph, they make Palpatine move so fast that not even them in their best would be able to catch up with him because he's, fighting in a way they're just like, oh my fucking god, it's like they're fighting against a spider on acid, basically just going back and forth.
Yeah, that would have been better.
It's true. They did have it Well, he also there are some weird shots in there too, like even the way he twirls over the desk, and they take defensive positions, but then he just kind of stands there, like goes like stabs him like this, and they try and use the camera to hide. It's like if you cut to a wide shot, it doesn't work. It's like you have 3 people who just be able to move in and stab him right there, you know.
But in the original choreograph, you can see that at least 2 of the Jedis are going after him, and he's blocking them, but he's doing it so fast that they're not expecting where it's going to come from, and they go one way, but he goes the other. So there's at least there, do or do not. There is no try, but they try to grab him, but he's too fast for them. It kind of reminds me in the Clone Wars where Maul and Savage Opress are fighting him off, and he's just toying with them because I'm like, you're nothing compared to me.
I have the same opinion of Palpatine using a lightsaber that I did when I saw Yoda using a lightsaber. I think it's silly. Because I always thought that these guys were masters of the Force and they didn't need such blunt instruments. When Obi-Wan says that a blaster is uncivilized, I kind of think that Yoda and Palpatine say a lightsaber is very uncivilized. And I understand the spectacle of it, but I don't like it.
Yeah,
I enjoy it. Makes me smile, but thematically, as the story goes, you're just doing this for spectacle, and it's not actually serving the characters. It's just so the audience gets to clap.
I wonder if Yoda actually enjoys, in turn, toying with Sidious, because when he says, "If so powerful you are, why leave?" you see a little glint in his eye, like he's excited at the idea that he's going to prolong this. And then it kind of blows up in his face.
Well, he's also arresting. He's just saying it in a Dr. Seuss manner.
I remember.
I believe that. I'm sorry, Ernesto, go ahead.
I remember that scene when they're fighting in the Senate stage, and I remember I turned to my friend. Oh my God! Did you imagine if the Senate was still in there watching this unfold?
Throwing.
Because here's the thing, I'm pretty sure one of them would be like, "Oh my God, is that a Sith?"
No.
Because in this universe, you read that automatically means bad guys, so it would be like, "Oh my God, is that a Sith?"
When I watched that scene when Palpatine is throwing the Senate at Yoda, I was like, "What if he did that with senators? Not the entire Senate, but what if he did it with senators?" And it would literally be a show of him throwing a fight while also winning, so that it would prove that the Jedi were bad. Like he would put on a performance. Like he
would kill them all in the end, and would blame Yoda for it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but anyway, there are. Again, I don't know how difficult it would be to create such a scene, to have that many like digital extras, or what the narrative thrust of it would be. But it just seems like there are more. It was interesting that we got to have a big monster truck fight in the middle of an arena. And yeah, it was kind of cool. It was also, I guess, a week of Ian McDiarmid in a green screen room doing this and cackling.
And the music was on point. That was fire.
I'm so impressed by the editing and the creation of this, but it looks flat. It feels flat. I wish I had gotten the opportunity to see this in 3D, because I think that if you spruced it up with 3D, it would be more visually dynamic. Like everything's in perfect focus. It's strange.
That was the cross-cutting between those two final fights works up until the end of the Sidious fight. Because once you start following Yoda through the vents and down with the Bail Organa, that's where that part loses steam with the rhythm of the other fight. And it's like, okay, we don't need to do, like, that's another editorial little thing that's like, okay, we don't really do that. Mustafar, I never really believed they were on, like, there. It looks like it was too much of a green screen thing. Like, they weren't actually there. like when you see The Northman and you have the ending of that movie, the two guys fighting along the riverbank of lava and the smoke and everything, that looks real because they, used actual, fog and smoke, all this stuff to make it look real. Whereas this was too much of, like, I didn't believe they were there. And that kind of takes me out of it a little bit. It did look a lot better on the 4K transfer, though, surprisingly. Those effects held up a bit more. Let's see, Daniel's Hot Topics. He says, I heard that Palpatine and his minions talking, and one of them said, maybe we should bring Master Yoda to the dark side, and Palpatine said that is a bad idea.
Well, that would be, but that's also, it's kind of weird that would be, it would be a bad idea to bring Yoda to the dark side because Yoda would be more powerful than Palpatine. But obviously not based on the Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper fight that there was. And so then I get it. But then why would he say Darth Vader will become more powerful than both of us? So then why would he bring Darth Vader into the fold if Darth Vader is going to be powerful than all of the Three's company? So you really got to pick and choose your prophecies.
Well, he would be more powerful at that point. I think his point was proven when he was told that Padme died and he was destroying the medical chamber. And you can see Palpatine just smiling maniacally in the back and just like, yes, my child, yes.
But it's something with the character of Vader and the definition of the Sith is that the Master will remove your attachments for you so that you can become more in touch with the Force. But the Jedi say it's really your choice. You have to choose to believe in more than your attachments.
That was another fan theory that maybe Sidious used the Force at that point to kill Padme.
I heard about that. I don't know. I'm not very familiar with it. But is that just like that's the end of it? That's the card that he dropped? That
was what people were thinking might have been the case because they thought it was too convenient for Palpatine's plan that the one person who he's been trying to save this entire time, which has been driving him to the dark side in the end, it had just happened to die at the right moment that he needed her to die. And so that was a thought that fans came up with because just because the medical droids can't figure out why she's dying doesn't mean that there's not like a Force reason.
Right. But also, and it could be inferred if you want to, and this is just absolutely the romantic in me, is if he's a virgin in the Force who is prophesized to be the chosen one, and he falls in love with a woman and then gets her pregnant, wouldn't it make some sense? And the children, as we find out, are Force sensitive. Wouldn't it make sense that she'd get some midichlorians up in her jizzle?
She already has midichlorians. They're just not at a level that would.
Oh, right.
But
we all have midichlorians.
Yeah, I appreciate fan theories, but I just accept that he killed her when he choked her.
I'm pretty much.
The sudden shock of it was enough to have her die during pregnancy because even to this day, women can still die in childbirth. So
she died of a broken heart.
I'm
Come
fine with that. I've seen it happen.
The aforementioned Jettison subplot was that after the opening battle, when Palpatine and Anakin and Obi-Wan get back to the Senate Rotunda, and Mace Windu asks if he's all right, he doesn't simply say, "Oh, it's great, your Jedi killed Count Dooku." He deliberately lets slip that Anakin executed Dooku, and the Jedi start giving him a lot of shit for it because you executed an unarmed guy. And Anakin is upset because it's like, well, you weren't there, you didn't know the situation, and you didn't, Obi-Wan didn't even witness it. And you really don't trust me at all. You're just keeping me around because of this, bullshit prophecy that you believe in. And you don't actually respect me. And they kept hammering on it because they weren't sure if they should really trust this guy. Should we even let him on the council for the sake of being a spy because he's potentially a murderer and that kind of stuff? And Palpatine was just using that to wrap around his fingers even more, making it even more believable that he would just turn on the entire council and march at the temple at that point, to find out that, oh, you've just been regarding me as, your lapdog, your little side project of, your prophecy, and not actually respecting me as a person, which we saw even in the scene right before Yoda leaves for Kashyyyk, when Mace Windu's talking about how he doesn't like putting Anakin and Palpatine together, and Obi-Wan's like, well, maybe the prophecy, isn't he the chosen one? And Yoda's like, well, maybe we misread the prophecy. So it's like, there's some merit in that idea, but it got pushed a lot further in the original script and in the novelization, and then they just cut it from the movie, I think, for time, because there were just so many dialogue scenes on Coruscant. Because really, it's kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde thing. That first half hour of the movie is amazing, like Ernesto said, an awesome, full-blown Star Wars action, and then it's just followed up by like another 25 minutes of just this staggered, bad, like really hard to get through acting and dialogue scenes before the movie starts picking up again. You're on mute, Scotty.
It's probably for the best. No, I like the acting and dialogue.
Are you sure?
I like the story, and every time we have to go see Obi-Wan riding a dragon, I'm like, is that a crate dragon?
Well, that's where the movie starts picking up, after that 25-minute segment on Coruscant, when we get back into the Star Wars-y action stuff.
I wanted Hunt for Red October, and I got Weekend at Bernie's.
And I like the parallel, though, that the whole opening battle is only happening because Palpatine is testing Anakin against Dooku, which is kind of a parallel, a little bit of the Battle of Endor. I mean, that was also about wiping out the rebellion, but it was also Palpatine testing Luke against Vader. And so I liked that. Like the other movies, like Episode 1 has a lot of parallels with the original movie. Attack of the Clones has a lot of parallels with Empire, but Revenge of the Sith doesn't have nearly as many with Return of the Jedi, and I like that. It gets to be its own movie, and feels, for better or worse, especially worse in the case of Rise of Skywalker, when you get the sequel trilogy, all three third acts are very different from each other and not really borrowing as much as the first and second acts of each of those trilogies do. So I did like that, even though the movie is very much going off a checklist, but you have all this iconic stuff, like finally paying off the fact that George wanted to go to Kashyyyk in Return of the Jedi, but couldn't, because they couldn't afford the costumes, because for every one Wookiee costume, you could get like 3 Ewok outfits. And they also had a problem finding people who were that tall back then. For some reason, it was a rarity. Like Peter Mayhew got the job because he was the tallest guy who walked in at the time. And today, it's like, yeah, there's like every basketball player is going to be like 6.5, 7 feet tall. But back then, and I'm not a doctor or anything or biologist. I have no idea why this physiological phenomenon is a thing. Why it was so hard to find tall people back then, but apparently it was. So I like that he at least got to, even though most of the Wookiees are unfortunately CGI, except for like 10 of them maybe. I do like that we got to at least go to Kashyyyk, and he used like southern Thailand as the background plates for it, and it looked gorgeous. And it was kind of a nice little nod. And his logic.
Did you just height shame the past?
No.
And the Tarzan yell was pretty good.
Yeah, the Tarzan yell.
That was dumb. That was dumb.
I did like George's
and they
logic.
did it again.
Yeah, George's logic for why
in the Senate chamber, that was also stupid. So
yeah, the logic for why he decided to send Yoda to Kashyyyk and Obi-Wan to Utapau is he said that those would be the two people who would have sensed all the turmoil in Anakin and been able to stop what happened at Palpatine's office. Like would have stopped him from going, and everything would have changed. So he needed to come up with an excuse to send him away, because Yoda does sense it, because when he's there, even before Order 66 starts, he's like clutching his heart. He's feeling that. Like it's happening, he's starting to feel it, which I thought was another really great scene, especially for the VFX. I think that's like the way they have Yoda like acting in that series of scenes is some of the best CG acting in the movie.
Sure.
And it is a badass.
And that wasn't mocap, was it?
No, it wasn't. And that was neat when he does the backflip and decapitates the clone. Like he's got that look in his eye, and then he just it's like you're done. It's like that was
and that single scene is why the entirety of the Acolyte falls apart.
Yeah,
because Yoda would have sensed all that shit happening.
Totally.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I was thinking about that.
Like, if he's all the way out in
Kashyyyk makes sense.
If he's all the way out in Kashyyyk and can sense shit going down, he can sense on the outer rim where all that shit's going down.
It's
yeah,
like
that makes sense.
He sensed the like when Anakin slaughtered the Sand People
Yeah,
village.
yeah, he did.
Yeah.
So this acolyte thing is just like Yoda's like online too.
I mean, you can make a fan theory that they know, but they're believing in him being the chosen one so much that they cannot afford to remove him from the Jedi Council or as a Jedi. Like they're believing it so much that they're letting something slide or something like that. You can make those arguments, you can make those theories, but again, we're working with what's been presented to us the way it's been presented to us.
Well, and also you do have to take into account the logic of Palpatine's manipulations. Like he has been long goaling this for a while, and I don't think it's fair for him to be.
And those manipulations, Scotty,
he's not resting his entire plan on Anakin.
No, but and those manipulations.
It's just Anakin is the most convenient of the newest apprentices.
Those manipulations and mind games continue in Lords of the Sith, the book.
Mm-hmm.
You should, if you haven't read that book, you should read it.
I can't read
the shit that he does to Darth Vader, the mind games
I would love
manipulations, it's insane.
I think somebody should write a book of the nature of Anakin and Palpatine's relationship between episodes 1 and 2, because it's like, again, the Jedi aren't allowed to have attachments. They still have be cordial with people, but like, what is Palpatine doing over the course of those 10 years to wrap Anakin? Because there's only a couple scenes in episode 2, like maybe one of them where they were together, and you could tell that oh, they finally given you an assignment. Like the wheels he's already clearly has his hooks in him for a while, but we never really got to see how that relationship started. So that would be neat if somebody went back and wrote that. But that's one of my favorite things about the trilogy as a whole is seeing Palpatine's conniving manipulations and how it's so just really slow and subtle. And I love the continuation of the motif that Star Wars villains get what they want by telling the truth, and Star Wars heroes get what they want by lying. Because again, the Jedi were spying on him. They did actively talk about in a war room meeting removing him from office. And so it's like, okay, so he doesn't really have to lie all that much about it. And even if he gets caught on a hot mic saying, "Oh, he had a lightsaber," it's like, well, yeah, I'm a swordsman. I learned how to defend myself when they came to kill me, you know.
Yeah, it's like, well, and that's what I liked about early Star Wars original idea, where the lightsaber had heft. It was so much power that only a Jedi could wield it. It was heavy. Mm-hmm. You had to use the Force to use it. And now it's a laser pointer.
No, I never believed that, because once Han turned it on, it's just something you can click on and that's it.
That's all. Well, and you know
Which
what?
never made sense to me. Why, when someone lost their lightsaber, it turned off. I'm just like, why is it not on? It should still be on. It shouldn't just turn off because it falls.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Because by logic, they cannot just throw it and have it boomerang back or do whatever, because you can say, well, he's using the Force to keep it out. No, he just clicked it on. It something that delicate and that advanced should not just be that sensitive.
If I drop it and it turns off, then if I throw it, it should turn off as well.
Yeah, the only time something like that happens is when they made the joke in episode 2 when Anakin's lightsaber gets like busted or shorts out. Mm-hmm. He's like, "Oh man, Obi-Wan's gonna kill me." But they're heavy, and that was why Richard Marquand really didn't like the fact that there was one-handed lightsaber fight in Empire Strikes Back. He's like, no, this is a two-handed thing, because this is like an elegant weapon. It's heavy. That's how you got to use it. And he decided to, go back to doing that.
Wait, was he holding it with his left or his right one?
In what, Empire?
Yeah.
Vader, I think, was holding it with his right.
And was that the mechanical one or no?
The mechanical hand? Yeah. Well, both of his arms were mechanical at that point.
Okay, so, I mean, you could argue that if you're not including the Force, but you can hold more than you normally would.
Right.
Because I remember in the Clone Wars when Anakin is fighting Ventress, he's holding her wrist, and with the mechanical arm, he's about to snap it open and she doesn't let go of the lightsaber. So you can argue that with that arm, it weighs practically nothing.
Yeah. I think Luke used it a couple one arm a few times, but whatever.
Hell, even when he's fighting against Obi-Wan and Obi-Wan goes with both hands, he's holding it with one.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's the same in episode 2 when Anakin briefly gets to yield both his lightsaber and the other one that they were, the two they were supplied with in the arena against Dooku. But yeah, there's that. But that's just
Lemon in the chat with something absolutely fantastic. R2D2 mercilessly cooking the 2 battle droids.
I love that. That was awesome.
I didn't understand it whatsoever, but I enjoyed the slapstick cartoonery of it. It was literally there so that no one would notice that Anakin Skywalker murders children later. Bring your kids. Here's R2D2 frying robots. Later, child slaughter.
Well, I also like when he kills the buzz droids because they decapitated R4, and then when they try to do the same to R2, he's like, "Oh, fuck that."
Oh, I wish I had a Sarah McLachlan song for R4.
Scott, you don't give kids enough credit when it comes to graphic scenes like that.
Well, it wasn't that graphic. I'm not giving it.
But they can handle that at that age.
Absolutely, please.
Yeah, look at the stuff we all grew up on that we've talked about. We didn't grow up on Care Bears and stuff like that. Like a lot of other little kids.
Right. The people who were born the same year this movie came out, they are currently 19. So they think that this is an old movie.
No, you know what annoyed me last year? I turned on Netflix and they had the license for the Justice League animated series, and they put it as retro cartoons, and I'm like, the fuck?
Yeah, man.
Did you just call me retro?
I loved it, and it was the first time that I heard Nirvana on a classic rock station, and I was like, "Oh, we're there."
We're there already.
When I hear the Beastie
learn a couple
Boys
of really
on
cool
the
things
Easy Listening channel, it's like
in this movie.
Right.
And one of the favorite things that we learned is that Qui-Gon Jinn learned how to become a Force ghost.
You know what? I resent that. I resent that line of dialogue.
You don't like it? Why not?
I like the implication of it.
Yeah.
But I wanted.
It makes sense too.
Yeah, but no, Liam should have shown up.
Well, I agree with that. But he was done with it by then. I don't think he wanted to come back.
He came back for Obi-Wan.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, but they also.
I'm just saying one shot. Like even Harrison Ford notoriously said he would never come back for another Star Wars, and then he got himself killed off, and then he came back for the third
Well, that's
one.
why, because he said if I get a die, I'll come back.
I think that you can't bring Liam back in that movie because the story of this trilogy essentially begins with. But the story of this new trilogy essentially begins with Qui-Gon's complete conviction that Anakin is the chosen one who's going to save everything. And even though he's right in the long run, he certainly didn't know that all the Jedi are going to get slaughtered as a result. And it's inevitable. How do you avoid once he shows up? It's like, what the fuck, Qui-Gon? What happened?
Right.
And in Obi-Wan, they avoid it because they make it like a joke. He shows up at the end and they have some laughing exchange and they don't actually dive into the nitty gritty of, which I think could be a really great scene by that point in Obi-Wan's life.
I don't know, but and I'm just writing my own ending to this movie. I still include everything else, but there is just one thing with Liam and Ewan, and maybe it is played seriously. It's not just like a hug and learn. I mean, it's like, Master Qui-Gon, you said he was the chosen one. And then Qui-Gon finishes the movie and says, Obi-Wan, there is a new hope.
Oh boy, that's pretty.
Oh my god!
I would have had Qui-Gon say, "Who says he isn't?" It's like just because he says it's over,
Yeah.
And that's. I'm not gonna get into it. That's just
no. I know. I'm just making shit up, but
no.
But I think it's a hopeful ending. I think it's a hopeful ending because we do know it does have to be a really down ending, and you can't have that Liam Neeson because then it's like, oh, well, it's all back together. Everybody's happy. It's like, no, you're supposed to know that everything is going to turn to shit.
But that is, a sense, the ending that we get anyway, Scott, because that's A New Hope is literally what we're getting when Obi-Wan is handing Luke off to his aunt and uncle in the final scene of the movie, and they're looking at the sunset. It's like, yeah, there's a new hope.
You get it. Yeah.
So it's kind of,
It's not dialogue.
Yeah. It ends on a little hopeful note after all the, the dourness and the.
And even in the Clone Wars series, the second one, after Obi-Wan fights for the last time with Darth Maul, you have almost the same effect when you see a young Luke running back into the house because it's bedtime, and
Those
you
Rebels.
hear in Rebels, you see Luke going, coming, and it's the same thing as looking to the horizon. There's hope still in the galaxy.
Yeah, so we kind of get that hopeful ending there. I do wish, like, Rick McCallum had apparently pleaded with George to put the scene back in that they had fully finished rendering of Yoda being dropped off on Kashyyyk, or not on Kashyyyk, on a Dagobah, and George is like, well, everybody knows where he ends up anyway. It doesn't matter. I'm like, dude, George, if you really want people to watch this in chronological order, you should put the scene back in there.
That scene is good too. It absolutely.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
I'm fine with it going.
It's like a sad scene that you're like, oh, here's Yoda, the sage of all wisdom, and now he's got to go live in a friggin' bog. And
he could have left it in the movie.
But if I'm a Jedi, if I'm Jedi Master Yoda and I'm living in a bog, I am there because of responsibility, and it is the will of the Force. I am accepting it, and I will take on this challenge because it is what I am to do. It is for the light side. That it's not easy, but it is the way of a Jedi. I'm sure he would mix up the way that it's said, and it would sound more profound.
Right.
But that's it. Like, the thing is that
it sounds a lot more like Frank Oz.
I am the Force. Yeah, exactly. The Force is with me, and I'm with the Force, or whatever the guy says.
I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me.
That's
but
it.
It's still
that's
a great
thing.
scene.
But I think that's the thing. That's what I want from Yoda is silent stoicism.
Yeah.
He's playful.
Well, that's what he gives.
Dude knows how to have fun.
It makes sense.
He's not daunted by responsibility.
I think at the end of the day, he realized that he created this. It's his fault. It really is. It's just I mean, it's the Jedi as a whole, but he's the titular head of the Jedi Order, and it's because of his. I don't want to say whimsy. That's the wrong word, but because of the way he held a stranglehold onto some of these beliefs, I think is the reason the Shroud of the Dark Side was able to fall.
Moses hubris.
Yeah, and the hubris.
Which is something they brought back in season 6 of Clone Wars, where he does face the dark side of himself, and you see how powerful he is. But I liked this movie because it's like, tons of lore. I do agree, though, that I mean, a lot of people like to say this is the best of the three, but I think the Phantom Menace had the acting and the dialogue didn't feel as bad because that's kind of a slower, kind of humdrum type presentation to the story that it didn't like all that. I didn't have a problem with Jake Lloyd or with his mom too much, even though some of the dialogue was I was fine with that. But the stuff in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, from acting wise and dialogue, is worse. You're right that Ewan and Natalie Portman are doing double time in both those movies to try and raise it. And so, like Phantom Menace, I could watch it, and the filmmaking aspects of it don't bug me. I'm not distracted by it. I'm just totally absorbed in the movie and watching it. Whereas this one and the second one, the filmmaking aspects in terms of some of the bad CG and the wooden acting and the dialogue really can be distracting at times and kind of take me out of it. So even though episode 3 has some of the best action, I mean, I still think Duel of the Fates from the first one is the best lightsaber duel of the 3 movies. But I mean, this one kind of it plays on the nostalgia that Scott was talking about and the jangly keys, where you finally get to see how everything's falling together in the second half of the movie. And I don't know if you guys heard this, but a strong narrative I heard in my region a lot and on the internet when the movie came out was, the second half of this movie is worthy of the original trilogy. People were saying it feels like, because that's where they start doing all the jangly keys stuff and tying all the connections in. Whereas the first 2.5 movies, they were like, we could do without. Which I was kind of surprised by, because I still think the second half of this movie suffers in quality compared to the original trilogy in terms of execution and filmmaking and all that.
Yeah, and I think for the whole movie, most of the movie, I won't say the whole movie, but most of the movie, Anakin's dialogue is just horrible. It's just wretched. It's just really bad writing. I feel bad for for Hayden Christensen.
Yeah.
You know, I think he did the best he could do with what he got. But man, when you get writing like that, weird lines, I mean, and no real direction, I think, yeah, it's
The
just,
thing I
you
do
can feel
give,
it. It's the movie suffers.
the
badly
thing I
for it.
do give the Clone Wars credit for is the voice actor for Anakin in the Clone Wars
Matt Lanter.
successfully emulates Anakin and Hayden Christensen, and but also gives it a quality that I prefer.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
And so when I do hear and I think that he took that over into Ahsoka when he does his scenes in the whatever fucking Quantum Leap. And but I think that it is something that informs the character. I'm glad that Hayden Christensen actually took on some of that persona in Ahsoka and Obi-Wan. And
well, he had
in the Clone Wars.
I don't fault. I know it's fashionable to be like Hayden Christian, mannequin Skywalker and whatever.
It's really not his fault.
Yeah,
I don't think it's his fault. I think he's doing a good job with what he's given, and I believe the emotions. And you mentioned earlier that I'm so blinded by love, and it's like it is soap opera dialogue. I'm still touched by it in the confines of the film itself, because I do. If I have to be hit over the head as an audience member that these two people are in love, if that's what you think, George, then I have to be hit over the head that these two people are in love. She's pregnant. I'm assuming it's his. We don't find out until the end that it is.
In the Clone Wars, you know, Matt had a much easier time and had
Is there an episode where they fuck?
More breadth and
like
room to grow that character because it was actually written well.
Yeah, what were you gonna say, Ernesto?
It'll come back to me. Go on.
Yes.
I did think that the Anakin in Clone Wars was a lot more mature though than the one in episodes 2 and 3. Like like if you tried to marathon or watch it, it kind of does this weird thing where it's like it doesn't really work. But I do like Matt Lanter's Anakin. But yeah, it wasn't Hayden's fault. He also had to fight for permission to be in the suit because George was originally going to have somebody else do it. Because again, true to George, not really thinking about having as much respect for the guy in the suit, thinking, oh, it's just a stunt guy, doesn't matter. And Hayden's like, no, and he fought for it, and they spent all the extra money to do the proper mold to make him a costume so he could actually be Darth Vader.
That actually now answers my question why it mattered that he needed to be under the suit.
Yeah, because it's like
he had to be.
He knows the mannerisms.
He had to be. It's just that because it's Hayden, he cannot just wear the original suit. They had to mold it from the ground up. Now it makes more sense. I'm just like, wait, why are you remolding it? Just grab it out of the closet and put it on.
I thought he was Darth Vader. It's his suit.
Yeah. I remember what I'm going to say is like, would anyone here with the right team and with the right, creative, force behind it, would anybody here be opposed for like Warner Brothers is doing right now with a remake of the Harry Potter on HBO? Would this prequel get the same treatment and retell the story the way we probably would prefer, or would that be sacrilege at this point? If you had the option to do so and nobody would cry out in anger and die all of a sudden.
So I think
well, I'm an
things.
outsider. If I may go first, just because I feel like the most of the outsiders. I think that I don't think it would be well received in terms of going back and redoing anything. You guys already went through the elimination of the extended universe being turned into Legends, and yet they decide to willy-nilly take whatever they want from the extended universe and say, look what we made.
Well, he was never canon. So.
And so I don't think that there would be benefit to it because there's so much lore and nuance with both the Clone Wars animated series and I think that there's too much invested in the Clone Wars now to go back and redo it? Like, do you mean just update it? Like, make it more visceral, or
Well, update by way of less clunky dialogue, better acting, and to seamlessly connect everything that happens in the series and not be so disjointed and not have a headache about, well, if this happened, then this shouldn't have happened.
is it that important to make it so that it
I'm not saying that it's
perfectly
important.
fits? No, I'm
I'm
just asking if it's that important.
It's not that it's important. It's just that if you could have the option to do so,
Well,
would be.
well, Steve had two thoughts about it. What are those?
So I think people who's grew up on the original trilogy of movies, I think they would welcome retelling. I think you'd have to do that though with not just these three movies. I think you'd have to do the entire Clone Wars. You'd have to do Clone Wars and the series as a whole, 7, 8 seasons of television. But I think the fans of the original series might like that. But if the prequel series is your Star Wars, your introduction to Star Wars, I think those fans would hate the idea. I don't think they would. Because that's their Star Wars. It was their introduction to Star Wars. There's people that love the trilogy, or the prequel trilogy.
And
So
I do want to address, because I know Finity is going to have a hissy. We were referring to the entire saga of Star Wars as envisioned from the initial 3 movies written and produced by George Lucas. And the phenomenon of storytelling that occurred from out of that. And no, I understand your perspective, and I like it. I enjoy that you're a purist when it comes to Star Wars from 1977. I think I referred to it as such this evening. I'm on your side, man. Not fighting on that. But we're talking about something different. Thanks, man.
I think my whole thing is that for a long time, ever since the prequel ended, and then we got the animated series all the way up to the sequel trilogy, all I kept hearing and complaining that this doesn't fit here, this doesn't fit there. Well, if this is happening, then why that? Okay, well, then let's make something that streamlines everything, and then you have a complete narrative that leads up to the original trilogy.
Yeah. I love the prequel era of storytelling. So, I mean, if you want to retell it time and time again, I'm down for it, because I think it's the best era for storytelling.
I still want to see Andor
so far, but I don't look. Nobody hates Star Wars better than Star Wars fans. They're the best at hating Star Wars. So it's gonna it'll be divisive, or divisive, however you potato.
No.
With the I think with all of the way that we criticize and the fandom right now and how toxic it can be. I hate using that word, by the way, but it is. But I'd love to see that. We won't get that, but
no, it'll never happen. But it's like one of those cool. It's like one of those maxi what if scenario. What if Star Wars was what if the narrative was like this instead of the disjoint? Because it's a disjointed mess. It is, okay? You can love the animated series, you can like the prequel, you can like the trilogy, you can like everything, but like Scott, as an outsider, if I were to sit down and watch everything, I would be like, well, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense to me. Why the fuck is this character here if they were never there?
Well, yeah, but this is what I sort of buck up against. Like, again, I'm much more of a Star Trek guy than a Star Wars guy. And one of the things
they got their own problems over there.
I know we do. We have such problems.
Nice button.
That is actually, what does it say actually?
Friends don't let friends hawk the Trek.
What does hawk mean? Like,
start talking about hawking it and trying to sell it. This is a Star Wars show.
Hawking your wares, selling.
No, but what I'm saying is that I enjoy going back to the world every time when I watch Star Trek. Yeah. And when I watch Star Wars, I ask myself, am I enjoying this, or did I enjoy the family that I was with in the first 6 movies? And I find myself being more drawn to the relationships between Luke, Han, and Leia, Lando, Chewie, 3PO, R2, Yoda, Ben, Owen, Beru, and the rest. But like, I love those relationships, and we can go Darkseid and Vader and Piet and Ozzel, and we're moving on. Jer Gerard.
We don't have to name all the characters.
No, I know, but that's my favorite Moff. It's because his name is Jer Gerard. Like,
but
it's a pretty name. But what I'm saying is that like I appreciated the relationships of the original trilogy. I appreciate the relationships somewhat less of the prequel trilogy, and when it comes to all of the sort of spin-offs, I care even less and less. The world doesn't entice me because the characters are not engaging.
I agree with what the Dead Man said in the chat that you had up there a minute ago, where he says that everybody has their own versions of what they think it is, and you're never going to be able to satisfy everyone if you keep remaking it.
Yeah.
I do think that if they were to do that, though, as like an 8 or 9 season show, it would be embraced widely as an alternate thing that's there if people want to watch it. Yeah, you would have other fans bitching about it, the ones who love the prequels or whatever, but it's still there if they want to. And in a perfect world where, let's say, these shows were as easy to crank out as a monthly comic, then yeah, why not try it? But they still need to, in general, get, because one of the things they can improve upon, for instance, is there was a whole deleted subplot that was filmed and rendered and edited in the film, where Padme and Mon Mothma and Bail Organa are forming the rebellion and beginning to form it. And George's excuse for cutting it was that we just needed to streamline the movie down to being Anakin's story and cutting everything out that was unnecessary. And it's like, well, okay, I can see that, but this is some of the more compelling dialogue scenes in the movie because it's actually pertinent to the saga as a whole and is actually really interesting. And, you know, fans had their little pet theories as to why the scenes may have actually been cut. Who knows? But that would be something you could improve upon if you did it as a miniseries, because there would definitely be room for it. I think Disney will reboot the original trilogy once Lucas dies, says the Dead Man. I don't know. I think Disney is fed up with all this, you know, the toxicity and the fan base and all that crap, that they're just ready to. I mean, they need to get away from that saga. They keep saying they're going to do it, and then they don't do it, and keep bringing things back.
Yeah, they keep going back to it, and they want to.
Even the Acolyte did not need to have the Plagueis cameo to tie it into the rest. It could have been just its own thing, and it wouldn't have been as bad of it being bad if it just existed as its own little High Republic story and it didn't work. Whatever. Putting Plagueis in there and tying it, it's like, no. It's like you've been saying for years you want to get away from the Skywalkers. Why don't you do it? Like, once the Mandoverse is over with, we'll see what they do. But I don't know if they want to actually, you know, go back down that road of. Because here's the thing: when I went to Celebration,
we should make a Shmi prequel.
When I went to Celebration in 2019, that was like the first time that you had a ton of prequel fans showing up because they were like coming of age, the ones who actually grew up watching the prequels. And there was tons of prequel cosplay at Chicago for that event. So there is a big love for that era. So
you have a whole generation that was their introduction to Star Wars, and they think the original trilogy old movies. And now we have a new generation where the sequel trilogy is their their introduction to Star Wars. Oh God, and all of the movies are old.
That's like watching the Underworld trilogy and thinking it's Star Wars.
So I guess what you're saying is that 2 generations now, they don't know what the fuck is good Star Wars.
No.
Yes. Okay. They don't know good Star Wars if they watch it.
I love Back to the Future. And
I'll do respect to them, but you don't know what the fuck good is, okay?
Well, no, and
that's
the thing is, we're talking about a young audience who hasn't yet discovered their. Maybe they're not even into film, but the people who are getting into film now, they don't know them. They're watching modern stuff, and they're like, "Oh, okay, I hear this." Like it happens. It's almost like WrestleMania. Whenever a Quentin Tarantino movie comes out, everyone starts up being a film scholar, and that's the next. That'll be in. So the last movie of Quentin Tarantino, everyone's going to dive in, and that'll be the next film school for a generation.
Yeah, but it is kind of annoying. Regardless, it is kind of annoying and kind of a backhanded insult about like, oh well, they're old movies. I'm like, yeah, but they're still there. You can still watch them.
Absolutely.
It's like when I was watching a review the other day where someone had mentioned like they were like comparing Alien Romulus to James Cameron's sequel Aliens, and one of the panelists said like, oh, I wasn't born when that movie came out. I'm like, and
Right?
It's not like it stopped existing once you were born.
It's weird, but I have friends like that. You know, you have friends that won't watch black and white movies, or they won't watch foreign films because they don't want to read the subtitles.
Dude,
you know?
I literally read a
I don't-
review for that Netflix show, the latest adaptation of The Talented Mr. Ripley, and they were saying a reason that some of the ratings were struggling. They found out from what they're monitoring, like the social media metrics and everybody hashtagging on the show, that a bunch of young people, stupid young people, were bailing on it because it was black and white. They were willing to stay with it in the beginning because they thought it was just an artistic flair for the first episode. But when they realized the whole series is going to be black and white, they started bailing on it. I'm like, if you were compelled enough to watch a whole hour-long episode in black and white and weren't turned off, then why the hell? It's like, what this level of, I can't, you know?
Yeah.
But that's what we're dealing with. One other fun thing I forgot to mention is that the first time I watched this movie, Revenge of the Sith, I was waiting for that moment when Vader and Obi-Wan's sabers were going to clash for the first time. It's like, as a fan, you've been waiting for this your whole life to finally see it, because everybody just kind of inherently knew that Obi-Wan's the one who put him in the suit, even though I didn't know why, because I hadn't even seen that concept art of the lava planet or even heard about it. Apparently it made its way into like a comic or some Legends material somewhere. I hadn't even been aware of that. It was just something that I was somehow consciously aware of. And so I'm waiting for it. I'm on the edge of my seat waiting. And right when those sabers first touch, it's like, we are off to the races. So that was actually, how is that as Star Wars fans, I have to ask, for getting back on a more positive note, seeing that part of the lore that we've been waiting to see our whole lives, finally getting to see that actually happen. That whole
So awesome.
Well, I think I got my tinnitus because of how loud the theater started screaming at that point.
Yeah.
Although, let me ask you, would it have been jarring if it was a red lightsaber by that point?
No, because ignoring the whole bleeding crystals thing, which is part of the
Not
story.
bleeding. Just say if
I
there's a
understand,
scene
but I'm saying ignoring that aspect of it, because he's his own guy, or his own Sith now, I wouldn't have been opposed that even if Sidious had said in his office right then and there, you've got to have your own saber now, even if it wasn't the same one from the OT and he gave him one or whatever. Because I thought it almost would have been more appropriate, because he's, you know, he's like, having one of the most key fights in the whole saga, it's between two blue sabers. I get it. Red's not going to pop as much on a lava planet.
Well, it's not only that, but Obi-Wan has to have Anakin's lightsaber to
That's
give it
true.
to him in a
Yeah.
new.
Right.
That's true. That was, he almost forgot to include that shot, by the way. One of the PAs or whatever had to tap him on the shoulder and say, you need to have the shot of him picking it up. And he's like, oh, okay, thanks. And they shot that pickup shot
Oh, right.
of him picking up the saber.
I just had a moment where I know in that scene you're talking about where he's sending Anakin to Mustafar, that from the bottom, from under his cloak, he's gravitating a small red crystal, and you just see Anakin disassemble his and put it in there, because you can still have the scene where he takes the lightsaber, but at some point he probably replaces the crystal with a blue one, because kyber crystals are still a thing, but we've never seen one
Right.
at any point in the saga until the series came.
Yeah.
Now, I want to pick a bone with you, Scott, on something you've been constantly bringing up, and everybody in any panel or podcast I've had that they have an issue with Yoda having a lightsaber and stuff like that, because, well, if he's so old, he's so powerful, why does he have a lightsaber? I'm just like, we've seen how many martial arts movies where the aging sensei doesn't look like he could do a damn thing, and all of a sudden he's kicking everybody's ass. That's always been the point of an old master. They can still do it. So I don't know why that's such an issue that people have, that, oh, he shouldn't be able to jump up and down. He's using the Force.
No, it's not. It's not that he isn't able to do it. It's just that he's more powerful than that to resort to physical prowess. He's better than it. He is so one with the Force that he doesn't have to do that.
Yeah, but the same thing with
it's
an old
boring.
sensei.
It's boring visually.
It isn't boring, because the same thing with an old sensei. If he's sitting there, he's trying to talk the adversary down. But if he must, he will, because he's above it. He shouldn't have to be fighting. He's already
but he should be like a quick draw McGraw, like one shot and done. And again, one of my favorite things that I saw the Yoda do is when he threw his lightsaber and then pulled it out of the clone's chest with the Force and then spins around and does the thing. And I'm just like, oh, Yoda, all cylinders. Like, it is so rad. I love the visuals. It's eye candy, but that's what it is. It's candy. It's empty calories.
Now, one other thing that I don't get, even to this day, and it's not like there's, even if you were to say, well, there is a narrative precedents in this movie, even in the whole prequel, is okay. I know the whole thing was is that because of everything that was happening with the war, with the battles, and how stretched thin the Jedi were at that point, because they went from a peacekeeping temple to generals and warriors and stuff like that, and soldiers. With all that happening, really not one person in all their meditations and everything could sense a few clicks down Coruscant that there was a dark side user down there. Like, can someone explain to me how you can mask that much power and go unnoticed?
I think it's
I
because
think that's part of his power.
I think it's that he wasn't using his power. Like when Dooku says that he has the Senate under his influence, he's not meaning that he's using the Force to do it. He's just being a politician. Like he has, like we don't see Palpatine directly use the Force until Revenge of the Sith. Really, the first time we see it is when he leaps over the desk towards Mace Windu, and it's like if you're not actually in touch with the Force or you're not using your Force powers, and you're just kind of there.
Okay, but that's the thing. It's like, I'm going to use this as an example, and if it's a wrong one, I apologize, but it's the only one I have. When Obi-Wan gets into the Death Star, Darth Vader says, I sense something I haven't sensed in. So you can argue that Obi-Wan isn't using, he's just walking around, but Vader can sense him. Now, you can also argue, well, he has a connection to Obi-Wan, so he's going to sense him. But how does someone that powerful can just walk in and nobody sense that there's something off with this guy? Because you can't just turn that off.
Well, I know that if it matters at all, that the Jedi Temple was built on top of the old Sith Temple, so maybe Palpatine was drawing some power from there, because it was established in Clone Wars that Palpatine actually did go beneath the Jedi Temple and access the old Sith ruins there, so maybe he did something. I don't know. But I took it to
problem, right? You see my problem.
No, but like you said, because Obi-Wan and Vader do have a past relationship, he knows, he could sense that his master's here. Whereas Palpatine, since they didn't know he was a Sith, they're not really, picking up on it or whatnot. Although it is a bad idea for Sidious and Maul to be walking out on the balcony in their Sith robes.
Right. So, and that's the thing, because Maul's there too. But so, Yoda does say hard to see the dark side is. So they try. They don't really do a good job, but they try to address that.
Okay. So do you sense a dark Force user or a Force user in general when there's intent to use the Force?
Well, like when there's inner turmoil or when they've done something horrific or something of that nature. Kind of like the Death Star is made of kyber crystals, right? Mm-hmm. And so when Obi-Wan, he senses Alderaan being destroyed a whole half a galaxy away, because yes, it's a million voices crying out of terror, but why does he sense them if they're not necessarily in tune with the Force? Well, maybe because, as we established in canon later on, that kyber crystals aren't just simple crystals. They choose, there's something ethereal or special about them that the Jedi, maybe he's able to sense that for that reason. Who knows? Maybe Yoda sensed it too when he was on Dago. We just didn't get to see. I always just took it to mean in Palpatine's case that not only is it part of his power, but that he's not using his power. And since they didn't know he was a Sith, there was nothing for them to really pick up on.
So would the other option would be that because of all the wars and how stretched out they were, that they couldn't focus and hone in on it then? That there is an air of, the air of uncertainty. It's difficult to sense the dark side of the Force because we're dealing with all this shit.
It could be the Yisla Mari. You remember the Yisla Mari?
No.
They're the animals that Grand Admiral Thrawn has in Heir to the Empire.
Oh, yeah.
They push the Force away. They're anti-midichlorian.
I thought you were making a Tribble joke. I don't know why.
No, I was actually referencing Star Wars lore.
As you can see, I don't know all the deep cut animals and stuff.
I feel like I'm in the deepest of cuts right now, and that's why I had to play my ace. That's the deepest cut that I have in Star Wars.
But those are some of those things that, for me, I'm just like, I'm going to have to just compartmentalize this and say that I'm never going to know the true answer to this. I'm just going to accept that he was able to manipulate everything so much that they did not see the answer right in front of them, basically.
That was something that got complicated also in Tales of the Jedi in the Count Dooku episode, where they revealed that when he was still at the Jedi Temple, he was already under Palpatine's tutelage.
Yeah.
Sith. And it's like, that doesn't work, because they would know that in that case, because they know him.
And even worse, when he's fighting off against Yaddle, how does nobody be like, wait, what the,
Yeah, it's like, what the hell is going on?
did you feel that?
Right.
Yeah, especially
I
when
would have been like, oh my God, what was that?
I would like to point out that there was a census that it had to be officially recognized that the religion of Jedi was recognized in England for one census.
I thought it was Australia.
Was it Australia? I thought it was
That's
England.
Australia. They put that down as an official religion.
So anyway, some population decided that Jedi was a religion. And much like many religions, I'm aware of them.
Right.
Can I ask, after this movie came out, before Disney came in, is there any post Revenge of the Sith comic or book or anything that it stood out to you that you like very much?
Not really. I didn't read as many of the post ones. I remember there were some weird ones. Like I think Dark Horse did the one where Darth Maul had survived and he had the spidery legs and went to the Lars homestead and like tried to fight, and Owen ended up killing him and with his like long rifle. That was just so weird. And they did take that. Lucasfilm eventually borrowed that design of the spidery legs or whatever when they brought him back in Clone Wars officially. Mm-hmm. But that I always thought was like memorable, but not necessarily for the right reason. It felt so fan fictiony and weird. But I don't remember much of the other post Revenge of the Sith.
Is it fan fictiony if it's poorly written?
Well, that too, but also some things are just weird. Like for instance, we brought up on the Phantom Menace review that isn't it a little odd that Vader built 3PO, and that's kind of like, does everything need to be tied in that much? It's like that
was one thing that I was debating with someone. If you were to take away the key jangling, the references, the callbacks, would it be able to stand on its own?
Well, I mean,
in any franchise, if you take away all those little Easter eggs, nuggets, callbacks, key jangling references,
yes.
Would it stand
there's more to the story than jangly keys, then yeah, they would be able to stand on their own.
Oh, like, this is a great.
I think Alien Romulus
great movie
without as many jangly keys in it, because I didn't need all the references in that movie that they felt. It got to the point in Romulus where it felt like they were shoehorning the references in.
This is a great movie. Like Revenge of the Sith is a great movie. It just doesn't have enough of the marble carved away yet. Like it's too technical. It's too cold, but it's also a dour film. And I think that there is a good there's a good narrative in here. There's a good story in here. It could stand alone. It is great. It is a good movie. But you have to chip away so fucking much to get to it. And it in comparison to where we started with THX, where it was like, nope, that's just a good movie. He took everything away. He just presented you with the story. And then you get to American Graffiti and that's it. Here are the characters and soundtrack. Star Wars was let's go. And now we're here where it's like, all right, how do I make a computer-generated spaceship put out fires on another computer-generated spaceship as it attempts to land? And when it lands, what I want is the camera to go right up to the windshield and everyone react. And it's like, all right, George, fine, fuck, Jesus.
Elevator's not working.
You got the money.
Yeah. I will say that the 2D Tartakovsky series did Grievous a bit of a disservice because in that series, he was a fucking nightmare that nobody could stop. And the only thing that could stop him was like, oh, is that a mechanical part? Let me destroy that, like Mace Windu.
Yeah, but that was Mace Windu.
And it does narratively fit with Revenge of the Sith because when we get to the ship, he's having difficulties breathing, he's coughing and stuff like that. So even
and it would also make sense that that's how Obi-Wan knows.
Yeah, but at the same time, it kind of was detrimental because when we do get to see him fight, he's not fighting at 100%, and I'm expecting to see the live-action version of this fast, maniacal nightmare. And he's not, but also narratively, it makes sense that he has been weakened because he hasn't been able to fix his internal organs, because it picks up immediately after Palpatine gets kidnapped. So he hasn't been able to catch a breath, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, because they wanted to keep it such a big secret that his arms can split into 4, and then that does nothing, because even when Obi-Wan's fighting him, he moves all 4 sabers in to intercept Obi-Wan's 1 saber instead of hitting it with 2 and then using the other 2 arms to just gut. Like, he's not fighting logically.
But yeah, when you see him in the animated series, the 3D version, he matches the 2D version where he is. I mean, he'll have his moments where he's being taken advantage of and he's a bumbling fool. But when the chips are down, I mean, he destroyed all the Night Sisters in that one season. He was able to bring Kit Fisto to a standstill, and he's fighting I don't know how many other people. I'm just like, see, that's what we wanted to see in the movie, but we understand why he couldn't be like that.
That actually was, now that you mention it and I think about it, it's over here somewhere, the one comic that I did like, Star Wars Visionaries, and it was the original backstory for Grievous, where Dooku felt that he was going to be replaced because now that the war was starting, they wouldn't need a politician as much, and he felt like Grievous was going to be subverting him, and so he put a bomb on his ship so that when he left Geonosis during the battle, it would kill him, and the bomb did go off, but he lived. And so he ended up being turned into this, like, monstrous thing. And I thought that was a good story as opposed to what they did in Clone Wars is, I guess, interesting, where he wanted to be a Jedi. He wasn't Force sensitive, so he started doing all these cybernetic enhancements to become one. And the backstory for who he originally was is that he was a warlord from this planet, that it's like they didn't want to help their neighbors because it's like Grasshopper and the Ant. Like Grievous and his people were like the Ant. They were the Grasshoppers who weren't going to help. And then the Jedi forced them to at the expense of their own kingdom. And he felt so ashamed and pissed off, and that's why he hated all the Jedi and he blamed them for the fall of his kingdom and just wanted to, ruin all, annihilate all of them. That was a good backstory from the comic.
Mm-hmm.
But, none of that.
But none of it was in the movie.
Exactly.
And I also know that, because I know when this movie came out on DVD, the first thing I almost never did it, but the first thing I did was, let me look at the behind the scenes. I want to see how this movie was made. And I went through the whole, I know there was a documentary where the camera is recording George as he is writing Revenge of the Sith, and he's doing it by pencil in a
legal pad.
On legal pad, he's just writing it as it's going. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I like how he's just writing it. No typewriter, no computer, just old school, just going, write what you know, write it there before you forget it. And I got to the part where they're doing the sound mixing, and it's on Mustafar where Anakin and Obi-Wan are fighting, and they're doing the whole like, okay, this is how we're going to make the sound of the wires, the sound of the metal, and the sound of the shoes on the wire. So you see them just bringing all these random items and they're recording it. And I remember watching, I'm just like, it is so awesome to see how dedicated they are to make every single sound for this scene happen. And none of it, you can tell it's happening because John Williams' score is all over it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You can hear is the lava falling and the wire splitting, but you don't hear the crackling and they bring this musket with bullets so they can make it sound like the keys jingling. I'm just like, nobody can hear that, but I appreciate the effort. A lot of work went into this.
No, it's incredible in terms of the sound design, and especially during that scene. Yeah, the breaking of the tension cables, and then also the score, and incorporating so many themes, not only through the prequel trilogy, but also through the original trilogy. I think that it goes on a bit long for my tastes in terms of the final battle, but
me too. I
but
agree
it's also something that I'm never gonna fault, because it is meant to be epic tragedy and a fight between brothers, and it's a Star Wars movie, so they're supposed to showcase shit.
Yeah.
But it is very it's powerful, and then it's boring, but then it gets powerful again, and then Anakin loses his arms and legs.
Yeah.
Madison.
The video game that was a tie-in when the movie came out is my favorite Star Wars lore, because you get to see so many Jedi characters that are never seen in the movies. Like, I mean, the librarian, the woman who's the what was her name? The librarian.
Caution.
Yeah, you see her in Attack of the Clones, but in the game, like, she pulls out a lightsaber when Anakin walks in there to ask for the holograms.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he's like, that is not the proper procedure. You will have to leave right now, or I will be forced, because she knows her protocol. And if somebody were to ask something without proper credentials, like Anakin was, she pulls out that lightsaber with no hesitation. Then you fight her as Anakin, and then you pretty much fight other Jedi that they were probably created in books and comics, but they put them in the game because it makes sense that they're there, because it kind of shows you how powerful Anakin was becoming, because to kill an entire temple full of Jedi, whether it's younglings or knights and some masters who were still there, you have to showcase how powerful he's become, that even these characters you've never seen who show they are powerful are nothing compared to what he's become.
You know, one of the things that I don't like about fantasy video games is sword play, because I never feel like sword play is like sword play. And that's why I don't think that I've ever been all that enamored with playing as a Jedi in a Star Wars game, is because I don't think that lightsaber battles work for me.
But that game also had a good what if situation, where what if Anakin won against Obi-Wan and he kind of like stabs him in the back and kicks him into the lava. So when he meets with Sidious, he gives him, "Congratulations, my young apprentice. Here is your new lightsaber." And then he throws it in the air and stabs Palpatine. And then he tells, like, "The Empire belongs to me now."
Why did you highlight that comment?
Because it's not true. It's the opposite of the truth. Juxtaposition
Because-
makes humor.
Yeah, and because Scott is a child.
I am a child, and I always
The
wanted to
Catherine
high five
stopped-
you, and that counts as touch.
Yeah.
All right, shall we wrap this up?
Well, we should say hello to the chat, and I don't mean read your chats. Chat. This was a big conversation in regards to Revenge of the Sith, and I know you guys all had a great combo in the chat, but I didn't highlight enough of them, and I'm usually the person who punches the buttons on that aspect, but I did nothing. I do again want to say hello to the Phantom Organist. Thank you for being here for as long as you were. Eugene Bird. Yes, this is my rage quit. Thank you so much again for supporting the channel. Herc130. Thank you. Daniel's Hot Topics. Judge Chief Finity. I'm dyslexic, I guess.
Mhm.
Lemon Pie. It's good to see you,
Canadian
Lemon.
Spider-Man.
Oh, Canadian Spider-Man was here.
Yeah.
That's insane.
He's very polite.
He is very polite. He's very good. He's like Canadian Davy Crockett, except he's Canadian
The Dead
Spider-Man.
Man was here.
Dead Man, thank you for being here.
Good stuff.
And
to say.
yeah, the Dead Man says that Luke does use one hand in Return of the Jedi on Jabba's barge.
On the barge. Yep.
He uses one hand in Empire Strikes Back too. He's kind of showing off, and he gets bested. I think that's it, except for the person who said the cat touches kids. Matt H. Thank you.
Who is Matt H?
We don't know, but he's banned.
And why are you thanking him for that comment?
Because I thought it was funny.
It's not.
Oh, I forgot to mention before we wrap up, that one character with the horns, Saisi Tin.
Yeah.
He has a great moment in the Darth Vader comic where there are still some clone troopers within the new stormtroopers, and he taps into their minds and he forces them by saying, "Execute Order 66," and they turn on Vader as a way of trying to escape a losing battle. And I felt that that's like the best way that he could like be like, you know what? I might have gone out like a bitch in Revenge of the Sith, but I will have my revenge here.
That's cool.
I just wanted to bring that up in case anybody has ever read that comment. That is just a badass way to go.
Yeah.
You may close out.
Why, thank you, Master Jedi.
Mm.
All right, then I suppose we may have a wrap up in terms of what's going on with the rest of George Lucas's career, but
I think before we actually close out, we should go around the horn and give our revs.
oh, the review, right.
What do you give it, Scott?
I think I gave. You know what? I'm giving this one a 5.
Whoa.
Again, I think it's a technical triumph. I think that it does provide food for thought for the overall Star Wars saga, but it's a lot of homework if you want to actually make it fit. I appreciate the technical marvel that it is. I appreciate the actors that are involved, because I think all of them exceeded the material that they were presenting. I was really going into this movie today thinking I was going to like it, because I found myself pleasantly surprised by Attack of the Clones. And I like Attack of the Clones better than this one. I probably like Phantom Menace better than both. And I think I keep bringing it up, but I think I'm framing it based on the fact that we watched the movies that this director made, and for him to go from THX 1138 to Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, is like watching Stanley Kubrick direct a GoBot episode. It's really disappointing. And the money that was involved to make this happen, I think that the technical achievements that he provided the film industry are invaluable. And I understand that these movies were a big part of that. But I don't know. I kind of look at him as being sort of Geppetto. And he made something magic. But I don't think it went. I think he got too much. The career of George Lucas is fascinating to me. And I think that by the end of it, he had made exactly what he wanted to fight against in the first place. And he's aware of it. He said it in interviews. And to see this product is disappointing. So probably, did I say 5? I mean 4. As a technical achievement, it's a 9 or a 10. And as a Star Wars movie, it's probably an 8. But all in all, when Martin Scorsese blasts Marvel movies for being roller coasters, you can thank George Lucas.
Sure.
So that's my opinion of Revenge of the Sith.
Okay. That was a good one. A little long-winded, but good.
I agree that, technical achievement would be like a 9 or a 10. That's true. Star Wars movie, I would also give it an 8. As a movie, I think I gave Attack of the Clones like a 6. So maybe around the same, a 6 for this. It's just like his 3 best directed films were the first 3 that he did: THX, American Graffiti, and Star Wars. And then after taking 20 years off and getting too used to Spielberg shooting his movies for him and being frustrated that he wasn't able to farm these out to other directors, that's how he got the quality of these 3. But it definitely shepherded it in the digital cinema revolution. So I give it, those revs.
Yeah.
Resto?
Well, I wasn't here for 1 and 2, so I think all
You
of
want to
them.
do all three?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'll just say, as a child who watched it when it came out, the movie's an 8 for me. As a nostalgia, it's still an 8 because I remember where I was watching it and the emotion. But realistically, I would probably give it like a 6.5 to a 7, only because it does so much to cap it. Like it's like really pulling its weight to cap it because it's picking up the baton from Clone Wars. And that's why I kind of rank it as 3, 1, and 2 of the prequel, because it grabs that baton. But other than that, yeah, that's where I would put it, because just be realistically looking at it as it is, objectively, that's where I would put it. But emotionally, I would put it much higher.
Sure.
I think we're all really in the same ballpark. I feel the same way. As a faster and more intense score, it's 6.5 revs for me. As a technical achievement, I think it's a 9.5. And as a Star Wars movie, I would probably 7.5 or an 8. So I think we're all kind of in that same mix. I agree with you, Ernesto. It's 3, 2, 1, right? 3, 1, 2, right? Is that what you said? Yeah, 3, 1, 2. That's the way I have it in my.
Yeah, I scrutinize Attack of the Clones more than any of them, because
Yeah.
it felt like there was so much potential to a lot of stuff that he was doing with Anakin in that movie, and with Obi-Wan and the mystery, that it's like you had it, you lost it, you took it, it went nowhere. That's why I scrutinize that movie more than the other two.
Out of the prequel trilogy, the second one is the one that makes me believe that there's good in him. The third one, like I find him irredeemable.
Yeah.
After a certain point, and you're supposed to, but that's why I like Attack of the Clones a little bit more, is because I like Anakin a little bit more in that movie.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. We were all really close in our rankings.
Yeah.
Well, it's not darts. It's not darts.
No.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate, like, I want to get into more sort of Star Wars conversations, talk about stuff that I like when I actually watch it. Like, I am looking forward to seeing Andor. I still haven't seen it, but I want to.
Andor's
This is
good.
also, and when watching this movie, I made an argument